So what we're going to do here is talk about spey casting and equipment that goes with it, such as rod, reel, line, and options that you have in all this. So today we're going to just talk about more spey casting. You know, there's so many videos on it, but I think some of the stuff that I've watched on video, you know, the casting's fine, but how do we get there? What's the equipment and how do we get there? And by that I mean, when I first started this, I had no concept of the lines and what you needed for leader lengths and stuff like that there. And you know, everybody thinks spey is some sort of a foreign language, but really what it is just another way to cast. And you can do it with any length rod. You can take a 6 foot 3 weight spey cast with it, because it's just a spey is just a technique in casting. That's all spey is. And we have two different lines, and the different lines are Scandi and Skagit. Scandi is a floating line, nothing more than a weight forward line, and it's 33 feet long, and to the back of that we add a running line. I'm going to show you all that here in a bit. And a Skagit line is the same, but it's more abrupt, and you have options with a Skagit line that you don't have with a Scandi. You can add floating, intermediate, slow sink, fast sink, extra fast sink with a Skagit line. And that would be, that line is, like I said, has got all these tips, so you have all these advantages to get down deeper and stuff like that. In regards to setting this rig up, all right, I got Dacron first. Be sure that you have some Dacron on that reel. If you just load up a spool with monofilament only, what's going to happen is the compression of that monofilament will push those sides of that spool out, and sometimes can just wreck the spool. So be sure you put some Dacron on before you put the mono running line on. This green stuff is the running line. We're going to take that 30-pound test monofilament. I like this green color, so that's not necessarily do I like it, that's what I ended up getting. All right, keep the humor in there. And what I did is I put a loop on the end of that monofilament of about 5.5, 6 inches long with a surgeon's loop. And when you make that surgeon's loop, it's a 3 times through surgeon's loop, even though the knot only calls for 2, 3 times through. Be sure that you put this around something and pull it tight as you can, and stick your finger in there and pull against that knot to get the knot as small as possible. I hear all this stuff about, oh, the knot gets caught in the tip top. That's all crap. That's bullshit. If you want to know the truth about it, it's bullshit. Because all you got to do, if she's hanging up, just drop the tip momentarily and reel it up, and you'll come right through the guides. A lot of this stuff is opinions. All right. So we've established that we got Dacron on the reel. We got 100 feet or approximately 100 feet, it could be 80 feet, of monofilament, 30-pound test. Put about a 6-inch loop on the front. For what reason do we put that loop on the front? So that we can go over the reel without taking everything apart. But this is a Skagit outfit. All right. And with Skagit, we use monofilament for a running line. You can probably see here. Everything is a loop-to-loop, as we discussed before. Everything is so I can detach this. I can detach this and put a different head on this reel, on this same reel, or same spool, I should say, without changing. It gives me the option of having only one reel, really, to be honest with you. In other words, I can take this off via this loop-to-loop system and put on a different line, a different weight line, or maybe a Scandi line, or if I use Skagit, whichever line I choose to use, one reel, 2 different types of lines, Scandi or Skagit, and different weights of those 2 lines. I just detached the head. I just took the head off of that. And now, with that loop, I can go over the reel and change heads. Everything's a loop-to-loop, all the way from your backing to the mono, to the head, to the leader, or to the tip, to the leader. Everything's loop-to-loop. And to the front of that Skagit line, I add a sinking tip. And it's about 12 feet long in this case, on this particular line here. To the front of that, I add a leader of about that length. What is that, 3 feet, 3.5 feet max? And I run 15-pound test off the front of that Skagit. That's how I set it up. Where you attach the tippet to it, or the leader, the tip to it, is very aggressive. You can see here. Incidentally, on the lines they're printed what weight they are. SK 440 grains. So that's the idea of the line. So because every rod's going to be a different weight, just like a regular fly rod. So. But that's how you read the line. SK stands for Skagit, 440 is the weight. The tip is detachable, loop-to-loop, via loop-to-loop. You simply decide which tip you're going to put on for that situation, be it floating, intermediate, fast sink, extra fast sink. You add a 3 feet of leader to the front of that, and you got your outfit set up here. So I've looped the head back on here. Reelers back up. I'm ready to fish right now. So these are the tips that come with your. You get a little wallet, and then you get different tips. By the way, they're double densities. So this one here is intermediate slow sink, and the numbers are right on the line, printed right on the line. It'll say 1, 3, or whatever it says. And as you go down the line, there's more tips, extra fast, and smoking fast. I mean, this thing drops like a bomb. The problem I got with all that is, how do I come up to a place and decide what tip to use for that exact piece of water? And unless you fish that piece of water a lot, you're going to be standing there all day changing tips. I just stick with Scandi. And I do use some light Skagit stuff once in a while if the water is up high. Other than that, I'm a Scandi guy. For those of you that use Maxima material, and a lot of people do, you take this thing, you take that plastic cover, and you turn it around, and you put it on the front, and you punch a little hole in it, and you run your Tippet material through that little hole. And also write the pound test on the inside with a magic marker, because when that gets wet and that comes off, you don't know what pound test it is. And when I want to pull some material out, I can just pull it out like this. And when I'm done, I can crank it back up, so it ain't all dragging behind me in the woods. I can't tell you the times I've looked back and my Tippet material is dragging in the back. So again, it just pulls out like a reel. The main thing is you want to stick your finger up in that hole and then put your thumb on top of that so that you're holding everything steady while it's happening. Reverse it now. Now wind it back up. It's clear. It works so well, it's unbelievable. I went to Michael's store, and I bought, you'll see here in a second, some of these clips with pins on them. And I glued them to the inside of a fly box. And I can take my tube fly now and put on that pin. I got my flies all on those pins. There's my hooks. It's a good setup. Instead of having them all bunched up in one box, this way here, they're all individually. I can pick one out, unpin it, take the hook, run the line through there. Incidentally, when you tie the line, when you go through the tube fly, and you're going to tie your hook on, use an end loop knot. An end loop knot is where you make an overhand, go through the eye of the hook, back through the overhand, twist it around 4 or 5 times, go back down through that overhand. That knot will pull up tight to a tube. Now that might be a little too much for some, that haven't done that, but look up that no slip loop knot. No, excuse me. No slip loop knot. No slip loop knot. Non-slip loop knot. That's the knot you want to use, because it'll pull up inside of that tube, and it keeps the hook right back there nice. The advantage of that tubes are, they'll take the hook out of that tube, the fly runs up the leader, and they run around with the hook. The fly don't get all beat up. But if you get it snagged up on the bottom, you lose everything. So anyway, if I was going to pick one fly for steelhead fishing, it'd be a black woolly bugger it's not a woolly bugger. It's a rabbit strip with slopping on the front of it. And I've caught more, and with a little bit of 2 strands of purple tinsel inside of it. And I've caught a lot of steelhead on that fly. You know, everybody's talking about these Skagit lines where you can get down along the bottom and stuff like that. I don't think our rivers in the Midwest, I mean, I know I got guys that are going to say, oh, that's crap, Nasby. I catch all my fish on that. That's because that's what you're fishing. So any fish you catch is on that line. But what I'm saying is, you can take a Scandi line, put an intermediate leader on it, or they call it a poly tip, for 20 bucks a copy. Hell, you can buy an intermediate fly line for 50 bucks, and you got 100 feet of it, you can make your own. And you put that intermediate leader on there with a tiny little cone bead, this is the smallest one they make, and you get that fly down 2-3 feet. Well, most of our rivers are anywhere from 3 to 6 feet deep. Them fish don't lay right on the bottom, you know. So they'll structure behind a rock up off the bottom. I mean, who knows where they are? But they'll come up. I've seen them come across the pool and grab that fly and take off. Where you'll be swinging the fly like this here, and all of a sudden, it's just like somebody come up and smack you in the back of the head. It's unbelievable. They'll almost take the rod out of your hand. In fact, if you're sleeping at the switch, looking around, and he grabs that thing, he might take that rod out of your hand. Now people are going to say, oh, that's an exaggeration. Well, try it. Here's a tip I got from Dave Pinskowski, and I would consider him the steelhead master. He's good. We all stand on the shallow side and cast at the deep side and try to get that line down. You know what you want to do? You want to get on the deep side and cast to the shallow side. And why is that? Because now your fly swings into the deep and it hangs in there. It's called the dangle. Now the fly's on the dangle. And if you're taking that line and just doing this, making that fly just move it just a little bit, that's when they'll take that rod. I've had them just about, yeah. I think you can hear my voice in those woods yet from that one I had here a couple years ago. Just about took the rod out of my hand. If it had been hooked around the guide or around the back of the reel or something like that, he would have taken that rod. So do as you please, but I'm just telling you, get on the deep side, right up to hit the buttons, and swing her into the deep from the shallow side. Because you're standing on the shallow side and you throw to the deep, it washes back up on the shallow side. It ain't up there, they're down in the hole. I sound like June Allison. So once again, the backing, the running line is attached to the backing via a loop. The head's attached to the running line via a loop. The tip is attached to the front of the fly line via a loop. The leader's attached to the front of the tip via a loop. Everything's loop to loop. Very simple. All right, that's the Skagit outfit. This is Scandi. Scandi's a floating line, but it also has running line behind it. This is coated running line. And that slows the cast down, just enough friction to slow it down so that long leader can roll over nice. Otherwise, the monofilament has no friction, and it just goes out and bombs on you. So I like to use coated running line behind my Scandi heads. This orange part of the running line, this is a Joan Wolf running line, by the way. Even though I'm with Scientific Hangers, I'm talking about Joan Wolf. Which they make their lines anyway. So here we go. This orange part is the overhang, the amount of line that hangs out the end of the rod. That tells you, that orange stuff indicates your overhang. And we'll discuss overhang when we cast. But anyway, once again, it's all detachable. This is a Scandi outfit. It's got a 17, I just measured the leader, 17 feet long. The head is 34 feet long. It weighs 480 grains. The grain weight is printed right on the head itself. In the beginning, we had to weigh our lines, but it came a long way, and so that's where we're at today. The leader, in this case here, is, I believe, about 17 feet. People go, 17 feet? How? That's ridiculous. Well, you wouldn't believe how they turn over. They turn over just beautifully. Skagit gives you more options than Scandi, but Scandi is a surface line. And I lean towards Scandi because where I live in the Midwest, our rivers aren't that deep. We don't have to get down deep like a lot of rivers out west. And Scandi serves me pretty well. I can add what they call a poly leader, which is an intermediate type leader, or a piece of fly line, and it's about 12 feet long, and you add to that a tippet, and now you've got a leader of about, say, 16, 17 feet, 18 feet, up to 20 feet actually, and you can run flies with that and get down, 2-3 feet pretty easily. I don't feel the sinking version or the Skagit type thing is something I care to use when I'm fishing steelhead. I like Scandi. I like the swing flies, and I guess that's my opinion. That's how I feel about it. I like the swing flies, so the Scandi fits right into that. I do have Skagit lines, and I do at times try Skagit, but to be very honest with you, I haven't had that much success with it. And I've fished steelhead since 1972, up until about 2 years ago. And I say that because we fished hard. When I say that, we weren't weekend fishermen. We fished hard. And, right up into snow and all that other stuff. So we have a lot of experience with steelhead fishing. But these Spey rods, because of their length, you have a lot of options with different lengths. I mean, this is 11-footer. They go up to 17 feet. But, around here, again, you don't need a 17-foot rod on our rivers. And I say that, it's an opinion, but I guide and I've teach fly casting, and I don't see any reason for a 17-foot rod on our waters. It's just, when people see that, they go, oh, I'm not interested in doing that. But when they see a Spey cast, knowing that you can Spey cast with a 9-foot 6 weight, 7 weight, 8 weight, 9 weight, whatever you want to use, knowing that, maybe it's something I'd be interested in. So there are poly leaders that you can add to the front of these Scandi lines, and they come in different light densities. So I mean, a poly leader is another way to go, and you'd have to. There's a lot of information out there on that, and I'm not that familiar with it because the ones I make my own, to be honest with you. There's a lot of choices, but there are poly leaders, and that's how they're described, and they're $25 a copy. That's why I make my own. Boop, 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 boop.